First, we begin with that breaking news. Former Sheriff Deputy Sean Grayson has been found guilty of second-degree murder in the death of Sonya Massey.
I rebuke you in the name of Jesus. I rebuke you in the name of...
I swear to God, you show your face.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Drop it.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Drop it. Drop.
The individual responsible for the death of Sonya Massey, she was unarmed, and she complained that there was a prowler.
Was he in danger of having hot water poured on him? That's very possible. But did it rise to the level of shooting a woman in the head?
Feeling afraid.
Exactly.
And having a valid reason to be afraid is what really turned this from self-defense into a second-degree murder charge and conviction.
He didn't pull his gun and start shooting. Now, I'm not saying that he need to be running out the house either, but I mean, imagine if every call he went on and there was a flying insect, he pulled out his gun and started shooting and other people got shot. You see what I'm saying?
Hill of Justice is sponsored and produced by Juming Delmas Studios.
The individual responsible for the death of Sonya Massey was convicted on murder on Wednesday. So we have Grayson, and we also have his partner that arrived to a lady's house, 36-year-old woman. She was unarmed, and she complained that there was a prowler at the house. So those two deputies were, it was real early in the morning. Those two deputies walked around the house and didn't observe a prowler. And then at that point in time, one of the deputies asked, do you mind if we check inside the home? Once they checked inside the home, naturally, she had a pot of water boiling in the kitchen. And one of the deputies noticed that, asked her to take it off. And during that moment that they asked her to go in there and take it off, she asked why did one of them behave the way that he did, one of the deputies. They got back. And one of the deputies said, I believe it was Grayson, that, you got hot water there. At that point in time, he chuckled. She then, at that point in time, she rebuked him in the name of the Lord and said it twice. At some point in time, he got defensive, yells at her to put it down, or he was going to shoot her in the face, I believe. And he did that. You remember that case?
I do.
Yeah. What was some of the most remarkable parts of that case that now that it's finished, because he's going to be sentenced on January 2026, what was some of the things that stuck out to you?
Well, I watched that video a lot of times because, especially with what I've experienced, I don't want to Monday morning quarterback an officer, and I don't want to jump to conclusions because I know what that's like. And I kept running it back and forth because I was trying to see if I could actually see if she was actually trying to pour the boiling water on him or not. And that's where everything got very, very, very gray. Because, I can't say I actually saw the motion that I'm thinking that I would see if the water was being thrown on him. But I played it 100 times and, well, not literally, but you know what I mean. And then I also thought of 100 ways it could have been avoided. And
one of the striking things to me is that as he's saying that, they told her to put it down, she yells, "I'm sorry," and ducks down with the pot of water. It wasn't too long. I mean, it was seconds. And naturally, she comes back up, and he shoots her in the face. Have you ever
Exactly. And
tried
when
it?
she came back up, I don't think no one can 100% say she was coming back up to throw the water. And of course, we can't 100% say she wasn't, but you know what I'm saying. And that's where it gets, and I think that's a situation where you and I both probably would have backed off. We would have put some distance between us and say, hey, what's going on or whatever like that.
Well, the kitchen island was right in front of both of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Have you ever tried to throw a pot of water on just anybody without hot water? It's not easy
Well,
to do, right?
I've never tried to do that. So,
Okay.
but,
Yeah,
but you're right.
playing little
But
games at my home. Yeah, that's what I did. I would throw it at my sisters and your
hot
sisters.
water?
Not hot water, but I would
Okay.
throw water at them. You know what I mean?
Okay.
That's what big brothers are supposed to do. And that isn't easy. You know what I mean?
No, I could believe that.
And then you got to be careful
Was it
for
just
yourself.
water, or was there also something else in the pot too? Was something cooking?
What we understand now is water. And it's funny that you brought that up because that wasn't put into evidence. They came back for that pot of that pot specifically as evidence weeks and later. That was probably one of the things I would have grabbed right off the bat in this investigation, but that wasn't put in there. And his body cam was off on top of that. Thankfully, Farley's was, and that's the footage that we saw
right
on that end of it.
And that's why, yeah.
And so, that's not easy to do. And then try to do that over, the kitchen island there. But more importantly, you told her to take it off.
That's another thing that was very, very interesting about it. And
Are you ordering anybody to go into the kitchen?
I'm not even sure why that was the case. Let me tell you where I take issue with the whole thing at. We're trained when we go on a domestic call, and if it's a kitchen, to have someone start looking for knives, and then if you see the knife, put the knife up. Not tell them to put the knife up. Say, look, if you see a butcher knife out there, they might not be thinking about it, but look for knives and stuff and take it and put it in the drawer and just start doing stuff. And hopefully there's two of you there. And while one guy is talking, you could be the one doing that. So if you see a knife or you see anything that could be a weapon, just kind of take it and move it or whatever. So based on that training, if that was the case, that would have been a good time to cut the stove off and maybe take the water if you thought it was a danger and pour it in the thing. Hey, I'm just pouring this out real quick because, we're talking or whatever. So if you go by the training that we're taught, I can see the water being a concern. But we're not trained, hey, can you put that knife up? Because the very knife that they put up, they could run at you with. We're trained to take control of the knife ourselves, So if there is a weapon or something, you always take control of it yourself. You don't tell them, hey, can you unload that gun for me? Because they may unload the gun on you. Right. So that's where everything breaks down right there.
You're right. You're absolutely right. There is nothing about our training that tells us, hey, guess what? Have them go into the kitchen. In fact, that's the room that we're told the most that people need to be out of.
Stay out of that kitchen if you can.
I mean, and this is supposed to be a guy who's supposed to be a veteran on top of that. You know what I mean?
So if you thought that was a weapon, you don't tell the person, hey, go put that knife up for me, or hey, go unload that gun for me. No, we unload the gun, and I think that was why he probably wasn't going to ever be able to defend what happened that day.
Right. I mean, that was part of it. But I take issue also with the 911 system. Here, and we got to do a better job with 911. On the day before, she had called 911. Her mother had called to explain that she was having an episode. And this was pretty much an unknown thing. And, her mom, at least, was doing the best she could to notify individuals about this. And then, usually in police departments, and I'm sure in sheriff's departments also, addresses are flagged if they've had other issues, particularly DV. And I don't understand why this wasn't.
I agree. Let me ask you a question. What comes back to mind is I could have sworn they were about to leave, but then they ran a tag and a car, and the tag came back a particular way, which made them go back into the house. Is that correct?
No, what happened there was they searched the curtilage of the house to make sure that the prowler wasn't there. It was one of the deputies, and I believe it wasn't Farley. I think it definitely was the other officer in question, Grayson. And he was the one that said, "Hey, do you mind if we check inside? Could be a prowler in there." The house was all disheveled. Naturally, I mean, she suffered. She suffered.
I wish we had that video because I could have sworn that they ran a tag. She said something about someone being outside, and they asked about a truck, and they ran a tag.
They could have very
Right.
early. They could
Right.
have very early.
And the reason I'm asking is I always wondered whose vehicle was that? If it wasn't hers, whose vehicle it was. And not that it would change anything or what happened in the house, but that was the one part of the thing that went unanswered. And perhaps that was something that came out in court, but it's the one thing that went unanswered.
Yeah. So they went in there, they checked, and there was no prowlers. They on the way going out, that was then it was about the pot of water that for someone who is trained, who's a veteran, he definitely let the emotions of the moment take over him. And I don't know if he got freaked out because he heard some religious sayings, but you have to have better emotional intelligence than that. That's for damn sure. And for him to do something like that was just completely out of order. And but let's talk about his partner, Farley. So naturally, she passes. Well, first, let's go from there. She gets shot. He doesn't even render aid. They're in the house, and this came up in the court testimony that he doesn't even enter. Not at all. I mean, I know I'm getting fired if I don't render aid. No matter what the situation is. But he called it somewhat that he knew that she was fatally wounded. Well, I think he believed, and not to get too graphic, but one of the projectiles went underneath her eye. I don't know how you don't immediately render aid. Can you see a scenario?
No, I don't. And I've fired deputies for that. Well, and actually, they didn't shoot any, but actually, I had some deputies working an off-duty job at a club, which I wouldn't call it a club. It was a place that you rent out for parties, but you might as well have been a club. And they were outside when a guy got shot. Well, actually, they were fired not just for that, but for cowardice, as they were going in because they were hearing about an altercation. Shots were fired, so everyone's running out. Well, guess what? They turn around and run too. One of them actually pushed a female out the way just to get out the door. I mean, it's a hell of a video if it was ever released.
Yeah.
And then when they finally went back in, they didn't render aid. There were other people rendering aid, and they just kind of stood there and watched while they did it. So, that's something that there's no excuse for. We're supposed to render aid, not just if we shoot somebody, but if we get there. Until EMS got there, we've got to do something. So, I don't know, there's no excuse for it. Was he shocked? Was he whatever? I don't know. They could say, everybody should know better anyway. Let me tell you why. I'll never forget when I was a rookie cop, there was a guy and it was obvious that he was dead. And they worked on him from the time they got there to the time they put him in the ambulance to the time they got to the hospital. And I remember asking my training officer, I said, that guy's dead. Why are they doing that? He said, listen, if you get on the scene, you render aid and you keep trying until somebody pronounces this guy dead, because there could be an opportunity you could bring him back. And I think also there was probably some type of lawsuit that came out of that as well, too. So I think every officer is well versed on the fact that that's what's happened, because that's what EMS does when they get there. They don't get there and say, well, unless it's some type of obvious death, you know what I'm saying? but that's just a protocol.
And I'll add on to it. It's to save our lives too.
Absolutely.
Tell you how. I was in a situation much like that, and we had to go ahead and keep on working on the individual. Why? Because we're in the inner city, and there's a bunch of people around us freaking out. And had we just went about doing what Grayson did and just not rendered aid, and so he threw the medical bag down because he found it to be that it was an unsurvivable wound. You can put yourself at great harm because the public is yelling and screaming at you to do something. I'm not going to take that chance. I'm going to keep on doing what I got to do. And then once the medical professionals get there, they'll take over from there. But I'm going to do all I can.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So I'm not going to go.
That makes a lot of sense.
So it's to save your butt too. And I hope a lot of officers know that.
Yeah.
Now,
I'm glad you brought that up because, I always look at it from the standpoint of there's always that glimmer of hope and that you don't want to not try or you don't want family members and not to think. But you're right. If you got a crowd in a violent situation going out, how do you think that looks if you're not trying at all?
Yeah, you can turn that crowd could turn on you in 2 seconds flat. And I've seen it on far less stuff, but we were instructed all the time. You got to do it this way if you want to get out of there in one piece. Now, let's go over to the case where he was indicted on 3 counts of first-degree murder, and let's just say murder. The issue at hand was, and there was other additional charges like aggravated battery and with a firearm, official misconduct, the garden variety when officers get charged with something like that, right?
Right.
So the trial began last week on the 22nd.
Mm-hmm.
They had to change a venue, okay, because where she was shot at, they had to go ahead and bring her somewhere else. So they found a jury of 12. I believe it was 11 individuals were white and 1 was black. They deliberated only for 12 hours, and they found him guilty of second-degree murder and not guilty of the other charges in terms of the first-degree accounts. I think that was appropriate given the circumstances. It's not manslaughter, certainly. It's not first degree. Would you agree?
No, yeah, first degree is premeditated. I don't think he went there with the intent to kill her.
Right.
Right.
So,
I don't think hey, we're going to go kill her today. That's what first degree is, premeditated. You're planning to kill somebody.
Right. And so he obviously it came down to the jury taking a look at what he said. They saw the body cam footage over and over and over again. They repeated that, and they repeated it frame by frame. I know some people may not like that and say, hey, guess what? You have to go ahead and take a look at it in real time. Mm-hmm. However, they were breaking it frame by frame to see, did this meet the test of, could this be reasonable? Would a reasonable police officer really take on and shoot somebody like that? And it came also to the testimony of his partner. His partner initially wrote on a statement after the shooting that he felt at that point in time, he was fearful of his life too. But when he got to court, that changed. Now, how do you feel about that?
Well, as a man who's lived through 2 trials, of course, mine were politically motivated, and of course, it had a lot to do with something else. But it's amazing how people's statements change at trials or what they originally say, especially if they think it's going to help them or whatever like that. But I don't know how both of them could have felt their life was in danger. Even if one legitimately, the person who think the ward is about to be thrown on him, that person, I could see maybe him saying, okay, well, I thought I was about to be injured, maybe. But if you can only throw water in one direction. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So the water is not going to splash on everybody. And even if it did, it's not going to be...
It's not going to render you
take your life. It's not
Right.
going to take your life. Okay.
Right.
Now, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. Scalding hot water can do a lot of damage. I think who was the famous singer that had hot grits? I mean, it can lead to some serious burns, and it can lead to disfigurement and everything like that. Okay, we can't doubt that, but there's no way to logically. I mean, if someone's getting ready to throw hot water on you, there's no way to. And I'm at another angle. They're not able to throw hot water on me as well. So I think he probably wrote that statement at that time. Call it peer pressure, call it trying to help his partner out. I don't know. I tell you one thing that has to come out of this, and that I hope people will look at. We got to be very, very careful how we train our police officers, because we train them in the academy that they can use deadly force if they feel their life is threatened.
Mm-hmm.
And we train them that they can use deadly force, a firearm, not just against another firearm, but against anything that can be a deadly weapon.
Mm-hmm.
So now, of course, I don't think we should even worry about it. Everyone should know by now a knife is deadly. It's not just a knife. A knife can be more deadly than a gun.
Mm-hmm.
So I think society has pretty much accepted that a firearm is appropriate if a person's trying to cut you with a knife. But we train officers that anything that can be a deadly weapon, they can use deadly force on.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be a car, that could be a hammer, that could be there's all types of things that if used, it can be used to maim or kill a person. Well, this is where it gets interesting. We're talking about hot water now. I don't think I've ever seen anyone die
Mm-hmm.
from having hot water thrown on them. So death is an issue, but I have seen some people severely. I've seen people, their face is never the same. It could cause severe injury that could be permanent, but it's not going to take a life. But where I'm going with this is this: we train them that if a person takes something and use it, and it can seriously injure you or kill you, you can use deadly force.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then when they do it, we two things come into play. Number one, emotions, because no one is going to be happy. Not even you and I. We're ex-cops when we see a woman being shot. That's just first thing. I mean, it's just like, okay, I don't know what it is, but I don't care how tough you are. Unless there's something wrong with you and you're an abuser, you're never trying to use more force on a woman than you use on a man. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
That's just something that I think, I don't know, if you're raised with any type of what you call it, gentleman or whatever, it's like, okay, it's a female. But I guess where I'm going with this is we train officers to do these things, and then when we get these cases, first thing comes is emotions, and that comes from all of us. Then the second thing comes, okay, well, is it, well, I wouldn't have done that, or it's just hot water, or it's just whatever. And I think what we've got to do is we got to clear that up. That way, they'll know if it's hot water, don't use the firearm. You get what I'm saying?
Right. No, I get it.
We leave that big area there.
Mm.
You know what? I tell you this, Jerome. The best example is what happened in Atlanta. And actually, well, we can use me as an example too if we want to, but let's use a better example, deadly force. You got a man at Wendy's, he beat up two police officers, he takes their taser and he runs and he turns and he points the taser at them and they shoot and they kill him. And then they get charged with murder. Now, that's what they train these guys to do. They trained us to do that and everything. They say, hey, if a person gets your taser, it can incapacitate you, then they can take your weapon. You're authorized to use deadly force.
Mm.
So we train people to do things, and then when they do it, depending on the politics or whatever, and I'm not telling you I agree with what this guy did. What I'm saying is I think we better clarify to officers better, because when you train them like that and they think it's justifiable, they'll act on it, even though it's not justifiable on so many other different levels. Even if it's just not justifiable on a common decency level because she's a female. You know what I'm saying?
Right. For me, it's always been what I've been irritated with the law enforcement community is using that deadly force as a cheat code. That everything that they feel as though that they're in fear of should be handled with deadly force. And that you could be afraid of a whole bunch of things. You're going to shoot at a snake on the ground because you fear it. I mean, come
I've
on
seen
now.
and I've seen that happen.
Yeah.
And
So
I've seen that happen.
we've got to get out. The law enforcement community wants to go ahead and defend individuals like that. I get it. The blue wall wants to go ahead and say, hey, guess what? That was something they can articulate that he needed to be afraid of. The jury didn't see it that way at all. I mean, it only took 12 hours for them to say, because in their mind, they felt as though, hey, guess what? You did. Absolutely, you did fear that was going to go ahead and harm you. We're going to give you that. But it was just unreasonable to believe that you had to use deadly force against her. And that's where the distinction is. And it should always be the distinction to everyone that uses or pulls out their, whether their taser and or their firearm. You have to be judicious with it.
And listen, I'm with you 100% on this. And this is not a shooting I agree with. But I think we better look at this training again, because you're right. Officers can use it as a cheat code, but some officers aren't using it as a cheat code. Some of them really perceive danger and, hey, this is what I was trained to do or whatever. And how do you decipher when that is and when it's not? And I think that we need to really, really clarify that for officers. And I don't know if it can be clarified, but we're going to have to do a better job of it, because if not, these officers can find themselves in the same predicament he's in. And I'm not saying I agree with what he did, but I think that training needs to be more clarified, because something can be in policy, something can be in training. And then even though you got the training and the policy, that doesn't mean a jury is going to agree with it.
Right.
And we really got to clarify those policies and clarify training and everything, and say, okay, this may say this, but there's certain things that we may not want to use deadly force on. And that's the real gray area. And then when you bring the politics in it and the prosecutors in it, it gets all convoluted.
Yeah,
So,
but
and I
policy
don't know,
can't
and I
take
don't,
care of
and
everything, though, right?
it can't take care of everything. But one issue we haven't covered since we were here is this. Okay, Miss Massey obviously had mental health issues. Okay. Have we considered that maybe he got some mental health issues too, by the
For
way
sure,
he
he had
reacted?
red flags left
You
and
know what I'm
right.
saying?
He was busted for DUI twice. He
Right.
went from department to department. He had a lot of issues,
And he kind of really overreacted to that. And it's my
Right.
opinion he overreacted. I know that someone's going to say, well, exactly. Okay, so that means that another thing that needs to come out of this is, too, not only do we need to do a better job of clarifying that, but we need to do a better job of checking the mental health of officers periodically.
Right.
Right. Not just when they get on the job, but we've had this discussion before, maybe every 6 months, because I think she had her issues, but obviously he had his issues too.
Right. He was quick to temper.
He was quick. Exactly.
Right,
Exactly.
right. And it cost that city a lot, to the tune of $10 million to the Grayson family. I mean, excuse me, to the Massey family. And, that's a heck of a pill to swallow when you are just, a struggling small department. And, I think the court, with how they saw it, was, your fear was real, but it was irrational. And yes, you felt
Right.
threatened, but the law says, hey, guess what? That doesn't make it legally justified. And that was common sense, I think, right across the board. And for him to go ahead and say he's big, strong, and he's going to go ahead and handle this situation and worried about a pot of that was feet, not 7 feet, 10 feet, at least 12 feet away. Come on, guy.
Now, you know what? I think all this pontificating I did, you just summed up everything what I was trying to say, and I think you did it brilliantly. Okay, you may have been fearful But your fear was, and I think you use a particular word, and that makes a whole lot of sense. Like, for instance, I got a friend. Well, you've met him. We policed together for years. He has a fear of insects. I mean, and he was a cop. He had a fear of insect. I remember going to see him one time, and he ran out of his house. I was like, "What you running from?" It was a flying insect in there. But he didn't pull his gun and start shooting. Now, I'm not saying that he need to be running out the house either, but I mean, imagine if every call he went on and there was a flying insect, he pulled out his gun and started shooting, and other people got shot. You see what I'm saying?
Right. And that's what you're articulating. That gap
Exactly.
between feeling afraid
Exactly.
and having a
Exactly.
valid reason to be afraid is what
Right.
really turned this from self-defense into a second-degree murder charge and conviction. That's
Exactly.
what happened, you know?
Right. But perhaps that fear, and I'm not getting on my friend for being afraid of bugs. I mean, that's right. But perhaps that fear that he had in there, I don't think it's the same as our friend. I think he had an overreaction and a temperament which caused it to escalate to taking somebody's life.
Yeah. And that's basically what happened. And so, the court saw this. They saw it for what it was. He told the court he thought he was in immediate danger, and I think he lost the court just like that, right when at that point in time.
Yeah. Like I said, this one here is one of those ones that, okay, was he in danger of having hot water poured on him?
Mhm.
That's very possible. But did it rise to the level of shooting a woman in the head? I don't
Right.
see it. I
Yeah, I don't
that.
see it
Right.
either. And
I
quite
don't.
truthfully, not with water. You know what I mean? Had he, let's change the theory a little bit. Let's just say that was hot grease, though. A little bit different circumstances for you.
Again, this is such a difficult one because, usually it's not gray, it's black or white. And does hot grease, would that have done more damage than hot water if it actually got on him? Well, I think so, probably, because it's going to stick and the water isn't. But again, I mean, how do we train officers? If it's hot water, don't shoot, but if it's grease, you can shoot. And that's why I said we're going to have to do better training, and we're going to have to clarify what we're going to allow officers going to do to defend themselves or not. Maybe we need to just train them to outright run if it's water or grease, because if they defend themselves, we see what's going to happen. And it's just a horrible situation, and there are no winners in this situation at all.
Before we close out today's episode, I want to turn our attention to Jamaica and what you could do to help. Jamaica is facing an unprecedented major crisis right now. On Tuesday, a Cat 5 hurricane devastated the homes and businesses, power and water, and the infrastructure were knocked out, and the road to recovery will be immensely long. It's an island me and my brother were able to go and fortunate enough to be at this year. And we're asking people to donate cash to trusted organizations like Project Hope, the UN World Fund program, direct relief, whatever your choosing is. Unsolicited goods, though, like clothes, toys, random supplies, sound like they would help, but in major disasters like this can actually clog supply chains and slow down operations. The most effective thing is cash, because these local teams on the ground know what's needed and can buy it where it's most effective. So if you are a content creator or anyone with a platform, use your voice. Share links to relief funds, educate your network about what's most helpful, encourage your community to give thoughtfully. In our podcast, we talk about justice, fairness, and systems, but Relief for Jamaica is also about justice and supporting people hard hit, often by climate change extremes, socioeconomic vulnerabilities, and global disparities. So as we close out today's show, I invite you, if you feel moved, act now, pick an organization, donate and share. Stay committed, because when Jamaica rises, we all win. And that'll be all. Talk to you later.